Welcome to the Christmas Sunday vibes. Oh, is that Christmas music I hear in the background? I don't know. Don't know where the editor put it in. And this is meant to be Christmas Eve. Again, don't know if it went out on Christmas Eve because that's not my job. But what is that? What on earth am I seeing on your
Chris
chest
Howell
right now?
bought me this, you knob. What are you talking about?
The material.
Just because you had to buy your own, you cock.
The material. He actually bought me this one as well, but the material
is
vile.
For under £20.
The material is genuinely appalling.
I know,
like it's horrible.
That material could legitimately start a house fire.
It's pretty much a wetsuit.
It's horrible. I like yours though. At least yours is like relevant
classic.
with the times.
Red brings out the best in my pale complexion.
And mine is kind of like brown. Right.
Yeah,
appropriate
suits
also.
the
Dark
shite
green.
that you talk.
Yeah, not great. Not the best Christmas jumpers, but who do you at home think has the best Christmas jumper? Probably is Patrick. Vote in this poll up there.
Come on.
Let's kick it off early. We're going to basically be doing a review of 2017 today, and we're starting with the manager of the year.
I like this question. It's a good question. You were saying on the way over here that Zinedine Zidane has got to be in the conversation because he's won what, 8 trophies?
Yeah, well, he's won 8 trophies since the start of 2016, but in 2017 he became the first manager to win back-to-back Champions Leagues. I think that can't be underestimated. He also romped to a La Liga title. I just think Zinedine Zidane has to take it home purely based on the number and the significance of the trophies he's taken. He also led Real Madrid, let's not forget to that. I think it's the record in Spanish football, 40 matches unbeaten, which is a massive number. In only his, second or third year in charge of a top-tier club. I personally think Zinedine Zidane has to be the manager of 2017. But he's quite a boring answer, isn't he? Let's face it. Everybody knows how good Zinedine Zidane is and how good that Real Madrid team were last season in particular. Not necessarily at the start of this season, so that could put him in to a little bit of jeopardy. The back end of 2017 hasn't been so favourable for him, although he has won a Club World Cup.
Yeah, and as a result, I would say, but do people know how good he is? And is he the manager we painted him out to be in the first couple of years?
The back end has not been great, has
it? But he's pretty unconventional for a Real Madrid manager, isn't he? In that he's brought success to the club without spending a shed load of cash.
Sure.
I think he's actually posted a net profit over his 3 years at the club. Sold big players as well, like Alvaro Morata.
That was a poor decision though.
Brought in some young, prodigious talent, Dani Ceballos, Hernandez, got the best out of Isco.
Yeah.
But not the answer for me. For me, it's Antonio Conte, 2017. The way in which Chelsea recovered from that terrible situation under Jose Mourinho to win the league with consummate ease the next year was very, very impressive.
True.
I think they won it by 10 points. Spurs finished second. They finished 43 points better off than the Chelsea of the previous year. He did it after a rocky start, which I've got a lot of respect for because he then sort of emboldened his decision, didn't it, to go to a 3-4-3.
Yeah.
Became a trendsetter. A lot of teams in the Premier League have tried to adapt to the 3-4-3 unsuccessfully. Ronald Koeman's Everton spring to mind. And talking of getting the best out of average players, look at Victor Moses, look at Marcos Alonso, unfancied signings.
They were incredible.
No one else was really in for them. Well, Alonso. Obviously, Moses was already at the club, but had been farmed out time and time again, and he turned them into world beaters at wing back.
Azpilicueta moved him into a central role.
And I think they won 30 of their 38 games, which is incredible.
It's a record.
Set the record. Well, until Manchester City smashed it this season for consecutive wins as well, which I believe was 13, and did it with far less transfers than Pep Guardiola has at Manchester City. That's not to say that I prefer that football, because he is somewhat of a pragmatist at times, isn't he? When Chelsea go 1-0 up, 2-0 up, they are so Italian, they do shut the game down. But yeah, for me, Conte did a sterling job. But others spring to mind, Leonardo Jardim, etc. at Monaco. Who do you want to talk about?
I mean, Jardim, you've got to give him some credit, but I do think that Monaco, pretty much everything they hit went in last season. I also think they got a little bit lucky to get past Man City in the Champions League. So I'd rather go for somebody who was kind of surprisingly good. So I think you could give a shout to Marco Silva. At the beginning of the year, most of us didn't really know his name.
But he still got relegated, didn't he?
By the end of the season, though, he's in the conversation for some genuinely big jobs, and I think that's pretty impressive on his part. I also think Luciano Spalletti did a great job with Roma. Has now gone to Inter.
That's a brilliant shout.
Like you say, without a lot of turnover in the squad, has made them competitive at the top end of Serie A, which this season is no joke, with Napoli going great guns, Juventus as well, and of course Roma still being reasonably competent. So I'd probably be inclined to go for one of those guys. Sampaoli as well.
No, come on.
Sampaoli.
What, Sevilla?
Yeah, rejuvenated Sevilla, and now Argentina are going to the World Cup despite having a pretty dodgy campaign.
And also, but I would say that's in spite of Sampaoli. I don't think that he's the reason that they've gone to
I think he could have done better with Argentina, but Argentina weren't having a great campaign. And you know what? All you need from qualifying is to get to the World Cup, and they've done that. But yeah, I don't know. I find it hard to look past the guys you people have said. And to be honest, if I had to choose one, I'd go for Conte. I think Conte is the better manager.
But who's been your manager of 2017? Let us know in the comments below. The next topic we're looking at is the surprise package of 2017. Who wants to kick us off with their surprise?
My biggest surprise is the lack of people in this pub.
No one here today.
Can you feel the stillness today?
If the sound's bad on it, we've
Respect
got nobody to blame.
Yeah. No one to mask our half-baked answers. Have you boys got something to hand? I'd head to the continent.
Yeah.
Anything closer to home before I do?
I mean, we have to talk about Monaco first and foremost.
All right, going straight to the continent then.
First title in 17 years.
Yeah.
An incredibly young bunch of players as well that managed to pull that title off. Getting the best out of some veterans as well in the likes of Radamel Falcao, who a lot of people thought were done and dusted. I have to say, I think Monaco's success in winning Liga, and I think they got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League as well, didn't they? Or maybe the semi-finals. I think it was the quarterfinals.
It was the semi.
And I think they got to the final of the Cup as well. They were on for a treble right towards the end of the season, and that can't be underrated with such a young bunch of players. Obviously, they've all been sold now, and the dream is over and dying. But for a short period of 2017, I think they were my surprise package of the year.
And those players will go on to define football for the next 5 to 10 years. You think some of them will anyway. I mean, certainly Mbappe will.
Yeah.
I think that he's probably going to be like the central figure in world football over the next 10 years if he continues.
And I don't think anybody saw that coming either. That Monaco.
I don't think
rise.
I don't think that crop of talent was a coincidence. You do a little bit more reading about their academy, and they spend an awful lot of money on it. I think it's £8 million a year. I believe I've talked about it on this show before, and that they've got more scouts in Paris than any other club, which is obviously a very fertile breeding ground for young talent, given there's only one club hoovering it up. Maybe RB Leipzig as well.
Decent shout, yeah.
Over in the Bundesliga, secure Champions League football in the first season, pushed Bayern all the way until the new year. Sort of the wheels came off that in January, but the likes of Naby Keita, Forsberg and Timo Werner took to top tier football like ducks to water, didn't they? Timo Werner cracking in over 20 goals, Naby Keita stealing Patrick Van Straan's heart. Forsberg, I saw him at the Euros and I thought he'd do something useful, and he's been great, hasn't he, for 18 months now. Anyone else maybe Tottenham a little bit closer to home?
Yeah, Tottenham's a really good shout.
I think Tottenham are they could define a generation in a similar way to Mbappe, because there's so much young talent there, and Pochettino is obviously now one of the best coaches in the world, definitely. They've gone from being a side that everybody always said they always underachieve. The campaign before this last one, people said that they were in contention for the title, which they never really were, and they ended up third behind Arsenal. This year, finished above Arsenal for the first time in years, were clearly the second best side in the league. And I mean that as a compliment versus everybody else. And now have smashed the reigning back-to-back European champions. They've been absolutely sensational. I really hope that they actually do well this year. As much as I want to hate Tottenham, I really love Pochettino. And God, there are so many good players in that side, even if Dele Alli is like a little prick.
Yeah, there's also a shout for Roma, I think. Under Spalletti, we talked about it a little bit before, but I think to finish with Roma's highest ever points tally and their highest ever amount of goals scored in the Italian league, I think is no mean feat when you're in a league with the likes of Juventus, Atalanta as well, who I know you want to talk about maybe a little bit. That's a fantastic achievement, and now you can see how good Spalletti is, because he's doing it all over again at Inter Milan. But I personally have to stick with Monaco. I think they're the number ones.
Yeah, I mean, do we have any more fun shouts? Maybe teams that we don't talk about so much.
Burnley.
We do get stuck in a bit of a cycle of talking about
Burnley,
the same
to be in contention for a top 4 spot at Christmas is incredible.
But they finished what, 17th last season?
I know, but just from, let's say then, just from August onwards, they have to be in with a shout.
Okay, but if it's from August onwards, then it's Man City.
That's not a surprise package. Would you say that's a surprise package, Man City crushing it?
Surprise package. I thought we were talking team of the year. Good
Well,
point.
no, the team of the year, yeah, for sure.
I mean, Sweden, you could argue as well. In a way, I feel like what's happened to the Italy national team this season has been sort of like definitive. Like you've seen a bunch of like major football powers kind of like disappoint this year, and a lot of kind of young pretenders with good systems and good ideas come through and succeed. The Champions League is certainly looking that way at the moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think ultimately, like, what could define 2017 more than a team that should be good but were ultimately shit?
I.e. the Italians.
Yeah.
I mean, Napoli, the strides that Sarri's made at
Best
Napoli could definitely be in the hat. Sarri ball, love it. They play some gorgeous football, don't they? The consistency of Hamsik, the rise of Dries Mertens and Insigne, that could be a surprise, but I think they were good players beforehand. Yeah, Atlanta, you just touched upon them earlier. I only watched them 2 or 3 times last season, and one of those games was where they, that was this season, wasn't it, where they impressively battered Everton at home and away. And Papu Gomez, absolute don, love him. Did a bit more reading into them. They're in their Zingonia-based academy. I think 90% of it is young Italians.
Yeah.
So this team, who have already sold Mattia Caldara to Juventus, Gagliardini to Inter Milan, Kessié to AC Milan, yeah, Conte as well. They could be the building blocks for the Italian team, you also mentioned, for years to come. We could see the best players in Italy come from that crop of players. So, like you said, there's some very exciting things happening around the top teams. There's been an air of predictability when it's come to the big teams, and there has been failings. I think the most exciting things are happening in the nooks and crannies.
Ooh, there we have it. Those were our surprise packages of 2017. Just before we go to our final question, make sure you head over to FDFC and check out our second ever personal mastermind with Premier League and England international midfielder Harry Winks. We quizzed him on how well he knows himself, so check it out and leave a suggestion on who we should try and get next.
Correct.
Yeah.
When did you join the Tottenham Academy?
5.
It says 8 here.
Yeah, that's wrong, it's 5. We'll change that one.
Correct.
We'll change that one,
And who scored on your England debut to give the Three Lions a 1-0 victory away from home?
Harry Kane.
It was Harry Kane. That's it. How many we got? He's absolutely rinsed that.
Our final talking point of this Christmas Sunday vibes is the player that defined 2017. And we're not going to include Messi or Ronaldo, so it's got to be someone else. But who is it going to be? Hamster, you kicking us off?
Apparently so. I don't think you need that caveat with Messi and Ronaldo. I don't think either of them have defined the year per se. Last year, the year before was Ronaldo's year, wasn't it, with the Euros? There was an argument to be made there. But I think this year belongs to Neymar because of events on and off the pitch. His huge transfer was undoubtedly the biggest story of the year, and maybe the biggest story of the last 10 years, the way it changed the landscape of the transfer market, the sort of fees that were being bandied about after, the impact he's had on the European stage for PSG, who now people are talking about as favourites. That might change the mentality at the Parisian club. They're going into a match against Real Madrid fairly confident, which may not have been the case pre his transfer. And now there's an argument to be made that they have the best squad in world football, with the likes of, Pastore and Angel Di Maria on the bench. The thing is, he's domestically killing it, like you'd imagine. I think the other day against Strasbourg or someone similar, you covered him in your roundup. I remember watching it. Obviously, I wasn't paying close enough attention, but he attempted 20 dribbles in one game.
It's ridiculous. Which
is frivolous. But I think he'll continue to dominate headlines while PSG remain in the Champions League. And one of his teammates might be who you're going to opt for. I don't know this genuinely, but I'd imagine you're going to say Kylian, the teenage mutant.
No,
come on, Mbappe. It has to be Mbappe.
Well, come on then, tell me about Mbappe.
Well, Mbappe, 18 years old, moves for 150 million on loan to PSG. Let's not forget, he's not even been bought by PSG at this stage. He's still on loan from Monaco. And then there's still a 150 million euro fee hanging over his head. He scored the most goals, I think, of any 18-year-old in Champions League history. I think he's overtaken Thierry Henry. It has to be Kylian Mbappe. to be at his level, at his age, making moves that he's making is unheard of. Like, Neymar might have moved for 250 million, Mbappe's moving for 150 million, and he's 7 years younger.
Lest I remind you of a young man called Michael Owen,
Yeah,
who by that
wasn't
age had
moving for
scored-
150 million.
No, you're right.
That alone is mind-blowing before you even take into account the fact I think he's got 30 odd goals and 20 assists in 50 games. It's incredible. No 18-year-old has done that potentially since the likes of Leo Messi.
Yeah, he seems to be enjoying the responsibility, doesn't he? And he does get better every time I watch him.
How is he on loan?
His movement off the ball is incredible. That's
Another farce of
different
2017.
conversation entirely, isn't
He's a
it?
big game player as well. Like, in the Champions League, I always think he's way better than he is in domestic
Yeah,
football.
against Bayern
There's
Munich.
just something about it.
Oh.
I think maybe it's because teams come out against you in the Champions League, and watching him run into space is so exciting. Watching
Yeah.
the expressions of defenders who know that Kylian Mbappe is about to try and run at them, it's fucking hilarious.
Watching Michael Lustig try and keep up with him. Mikel.
What a player.
I've just anglicised his name. Michael Lustig.
Mike.
Mikel
Who
Lustig.
are you going for then?
Look, I mean, it's hard to argue with those two, but I'm going to go for somebody who I think has just been consistently amazing all year, and that's Kevin De Bruyne.
Naby Keita.
I think that Kevin De Bruyne has been maybe the most watchable player in the world like this year. He's so
Certainly this
incredibly
season.
good. He can do
Back end of
absolute-
last season, really?
didn't he get like 18 assists in the league last season? He quietly put up one of the best creative seasons in the history of the Premier League.
But I wouldn't say he was
nobody
the best
noticed.
creator in the back end of last season.
I would.
Okay.
No, I mean, like, it depends. It depends on taste, but to a certain extent, like Kevin De Bruyne this year, like before this, he was a really, really good player. He was one of the world's best in his position. Now I think he is a top 3 or 4 player.
In the world.
He's just like putty, isn't he? He seems to be able to do whatever like Pep can bend and shape him to the manner in
He's
which they
much
need to
better in
play.
central midfield than he is attackers as well.
Like certain games as well. Okay, in this game, Kevin, we're not seeing as much as the ball. We're getting done on the counter-attack. I need you to sit deep and just throw some Hail Marys.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, in this game, I need you to join the front three and arrive like, at the edge of the box
Such
and
an underrated
smash one in.
dribbler as well.
He's
What's
not
he
that
beating?
fast.
3 men a game?
He's not that fast, and he doesn't do like a lot of step overs or whatever. But he's just strong, and like his stamina is ridiculous. Like in a way, he's kind of the successor to Yaya Toure in that team, even though they're not really similar in style. But that versatility, like he is what you need him to be, except when you need him to be Xavi and pass out the game. Like this is the one thing he can't do. Pep Guardiola has been raging about this, but he can do everything else. He can drop onto the wing. He can play through the middle. He can sit in central midfield. He can defend if you need him to. He's just he's like the quintessential modern footballer in that he can do almost anything. But in a way, that makes him like a timeless footballer because he's kind of the summation of what they were trying to do in the Ajax academy for the last half century, where they've been trying to create players who can be in any position, use either foot, and they constantly are playing incredibly well.
He could do a shift at
They're
centre
always-
back, couldn't he?
Yeah, he's always at his best.
What do you think to
He's-
his evolution
He's incredible.
this season? Sort of taking a look at a few of his stats, and he's putting up 20 more passes a game, but he's not feeding in as many key passes. He's leaving that to David Silva. He's dropping further back. His average position is falling further back, but he's still contributed to 10 assists and maybe
Ridiculous
5
numbers,
goals
yeah.
so far as well.
I think he put
So
up 7 tackles and interceptions against Tottenham.
He's become the creative hub of that team, hasn't he? And when you consider some of the players they've got, that is mental.
He's an absolutely amazing player. I just think we're so lucky to.
But did
have
you prefer
in
him
the
last
Premier
season or
League.
this season?
This season, definitely.
Definitely this season.
last
Completely different
last
player.
season he was great, but he was more of a conventional creator, I guess. I mean, he's still putting up absolutely insane creative numbers, but I would just always want him in my team. He's just that guy who not only is brilliantly talented, but he will do what it takes to make sure his team win.
He's
And as a
full
result,
throttle, isn't he?
they've won however many games on the bounce. What is it, 18 or something ridiculous?
He's
Who
full
knows?
throttle. That moment against Spurs when he tracked back 40 yards
Yeah.
to win the ball and then dinked it over, was it? Might have been Kieran Trippier, might have been Danny Rose. One of their heads in his own half was.
And when he got clattered by Dele Alli and then gets back
Wonderful.
up, wins the ball, rages on 30 yards and smashes with his weak foot past Hugo Lloris.
And imagine just bangs past Moussa Dembele like he isn't there.
Yeah, I know.
Very few people can claim to have done that.
He
I just
hits-
think he's been so watchable. this
Cannon.
season.
You know
So
when you watch
exciting.
black and white footage of Bobby Moore just smashing balls,
Yeah.
and you're like, how could anyone have hit the ball that hard? That's how hard KDB can hit.
That's the other thing as well though. Like we've seen
Bobby
that this
Charlton,
season.
not
We've
more.
seen him improve himself. So like last year, I remember seeing him take on left foot shots, and I was like, Jesus, this is woeful. Like, you know, because they weren't particularly
Not
good,
this
but he's
year.
obviously been practicing it, and now this year he's just banging in left foot shots, left, right, and centre. It's incredible.
Yeah, let's go to a poll then. Neymar, KDB, or Mbappe, who has been your defining player of the year just gone? That's the end of the show, but before we go, it's Christmas Eve, so what are we getting for Christmas, Hamill?
An Xbox, I believe.
Right,
I've had it early, so I know what I'm getting, because I thought we were going to start pro clubs on FDFC. Not started yet, but coming your way soon. So I'll be spending Christmas blowing the heads off Nazis.
Oh, that
Oh,
does sound great.
what are you getting?
I don't know. It's a surprise, mate.
Mine's also a surprise. What are you getting? Let us know in the comments below and tweet us. So have a great Christmas, and we'll see you around New Year. I think that's when the next episode's coming out.
Yeah.
Bye.